As my daughter tossed my suitcase onto the steps, I sensed that 10 years of quiet suffering were about to turn into the best decision of my life. I stood there, in my church sweater, watching my own flesh and blood push me out like a piece of trash. Little did they know that this piece of trash was about to turn into a $10 million deal. If you're reading this, leave a comment and tell me where you're from. I want to tell you about a 8-year-old woman's journey from homelessness to the most luxurious home in Crestwood Hills. Because, my friend, revenge isn't best served cold. It's best served with pure, raw success. My name is Evelyn Harper, but my friends call me Eve. At 70, I know there's nothing better than proving people wrong, except making them regret ever taking you for granted. My daughter, Laura, and her husband, Michael, have given me countless reasons to prove myself. On the 7th of March, 2015, my world came crashing down. I had been living with Laura and Michael for 4 months after losing my husband, helping to care for their 3 young children while trying to find a new path in life. My husband's life insurance policy wasn't much, but I had always believed that family was a pillar of strength in times of need. "Mom, we need to talk," Laura said that morning, her voice sharp, a far cry from the warmth I had come to know. Michael stood beside her, hands in his pockets, a smirk on his face that I had come to recognize as a sign of contempt. At 35, he was a gentleman, but his charm was painful to get close to. "What's wrong, honey?" I asked, setting my teacup down on the oak kitchen table, which I'd saved up to buy with my meager pension over the past year. "This arrangement isn't working anymore," Michael said, stepping forward as if he were the one who had made all the decisions, which he obviously was. "You're too involved, Eve. The kids don't know who to listen to in this house." I looked at Laura, hoping she would say something to defend me, to remember that I was her mother, the one who had raised her alone after her father left when she was 6. But Laura just bowed her head, avoiding my gaze, as if I were a stranger begging on the street. "Where are you going?" I asked, my voice weaker than I wanted it to be. "That's none of our business anymore," Michael replied, with a shrug that haunted me. "You're a grown woman. You can take care of yourself." 15 minutes later, my entire life was packed into a backpack, a duffel bag, and an old cardboard box. 58 years of memories, family photos, souvenirs, all I could carry. "The rest will go to charity," Michael said in a falsely gentle tone, as if he were doing me a favor. "Don't make things more complicated than they need to be, Mom," Laura whispered as she dragged my suitcase out onto the steps. For a moment, I caught a glimpse of the girl who had held me close when I left for my night shift. But then, Michael appeared behind her, and Laura's gaze turned cold and distant again. The taxi arrived just as the first gust of cold wind blew, bringing with it a drizzle. I got into the car and didn't look back, not because I was strong, but because my heart was broken. As the taxi pulled away, I saw Laura through the window, pulling the curtains of the room I used to live in, as if she were erasing my existence. I had only $732 in my wallet, no job, no place to go. But what I didn't expect was that this humiliation would become the spark that ignited the most powerful story of my life. The Starlight Motel on Highway 12 became my home for the next 8 weeks. It was every bit as posh as the rumors said it would be. $38 a night for a room that smelled of stale cigarettes and dashed hopes, but at least it had a roof and a sturdy lock. After being treated like trash, that felt like a privilege. The white-haired hostess, Clara, started to notice me after the first few days. "You're not like most people who come here," she said, her voice deep, as she handed me a clean blanket across the counter. "Most of the people here were truck drivers or people running from something. I was just trying to escape the fact that my own daughter had turned her back on me. The first few mornings were the hardest. I'd wake up on the hard single bed, momentarily forgetting where I was. Then reality would hit me like a punch in the face. No more laughter from the grandchildren, no more breakfasts to prepare, just me and the old ceiling fan that squeaked like a trapped cat. But Laura and Michael didn't expect this. I wasn't the type to give up easily. Never. When Laura was a baby, and it was just the 2 of us, I worked 3 jobs to make ends meet. I cleaned hotels at night, waited tables in the morning, and did sewing on the weekends. Survival was not something I was new to. I just forgot how good I was. The first thing I did was walk to the community center every day. There was free Wi-Fi, a cool place, and, most importantly, a computer station with online job listings. At 58, no one was eager to hire me, but I didn't want pity. I needed a chance. "Do you have any warehouse experience?" Ellen Carter, owner of Carter's Fresh Market, asked me. It was our third interview of the week, and Ellen, a woman about my age with work-worn hands and a direct gaze, earned my immediate respect. 25 years, I replied. I had managed all the inventory and records for my husband's small shipping company before he died. What I didn't say was that in just 15 minutes in her cluttered office, I'd identified at least 4 places where the store was wasting money. The inventory tracking system was a mess, the receipts were overpriced, and her price list was out of date from 2010. "The pay isn't great," Ellen warned. "It's $14 an hour, part-time." I smiled and asked, "When can I start?" My first paycheck was $224, but it felt like a golden ticket. After 8 weeks of watching my savings dwindle like sand through my fingers, having an income again was like taking a deep breath after a long period of suffocation. The Starlight Room gradually became more familiar, from a temporary shelter to a small corner that felt like home. I bought a small kettle, taped a few family photos to the walls, and even splurged on a small pot of herbs to put on the windowsill. If this was my new life, I was going to live it well. 4 months into the job, I discovered my first real opportunity. Ellen was throwing away thousands of dollars of organic food each year. Anything that didn't sell before its expiration date was thrown in the trash. "That's how it works," she said, with a shrug as if she was used to it. But I saw something else. I saw a forgotten treasure. "What are you going to do with these wilted vegetables?" Ellen asked, looking at me as if I had suggested selling rainwater or clouds. "They're not really bad," I explained, keeping my voice even. "With the right treatment, most of them can be turned into new products and sold again." It was now the 9th month of my new life, and I had moved from the Starlight Inn to a tiny studio apartment above Benny's Bakery. The rent was $620 a month, which left me with about $40 for everything else after groceries. But it was my own space. No one could kick me out or judge me for being annoying. That October, Ellen agreed to let me bring in 2 boxes of discarded produce, perhaps thinking I would soon learn the rigors of business. What really surprised me was that I had a talent I hadn't realized before. My tiny apartment had become a miniature food factory. Every kitchen counter, every corner table, even the floor was filled with glass jars and trays of processed vegetables. I spent time at the community center learning about food preservation, watching YouTube tutorials on jams, sauces, and fermenting vegetables. Every night, I transformed wilted vegetables into colorful new products. Neighbors began to get curious. Mr. Rodriguez in the apartment next door kept asking if I was running a secret kitchen. "Too many jars," he muttered, shaking his head every time I carried another bag of ingredients upstairs. But by January, something magical happened. The jars of tomato jam, pickles, and vegetable sauces began to look really impressive. My studio apartment had become a mini grocery store, filled with jars of fresh produce. I've processed over 300 pounds of produce, and about 200 pounds of it have not only been saved, but have become hot items. "Eve, what are you doing?" Ellen gaped when I brought the first batch back to the store in February. "These look better than the new arrivals." "I told you, they're not spoiled," I replied, trying to contain my grin. Inside, I was dancing. This wasn't just about proving something. This is when I discovered I had a real ability, an ability to make money. Ellen agreed to buy the entire batch of products for half the usual retail price. In one transaction, I made $732, far exceeding my first month's salary. But more importantly, I found a purpose in life, something that made me feel like I was actually creating value. The following year, Ellen and I made a formal agreement. She would keep all the unsold fruits and vegetables for me. I would process them into products like jams, sauces, and ferments during the winter, and we would split the profits in the spring. It wasn't an empire yet, but it was mine. Word began to spread in the organic food community. Eve at Carter's Fresh Market could turn anything into something worth eating, people said. Soon, other grocers in the area started calling, asking if I wanted to take their perishable inventory. By the end of my second year, I was making more money from food processing than I was from my warehouse job. I also moved into a larger apartment with a small yard, and with the permission of Benny's bakery owner, I converted part of his parking lot into a makeshift workshop. The best part was that every jar of jam or tray of pickles I created was a reminder that throwaway doesn't have to mean useless. Anything, given the right care and someone who sees its potential, can shine. Laura and Michael pushed me to the sidelines, thinking I would fade away and disappear. Instead, I found fertile ground they never imagined. By my third year, I decided to stop thinking small and start dreaming big. By now, I had a list of organic food stores lined up waiting for me to clear their inventory. But my apartment was too small to store. My landlord was complaining about the vegetable wash soaking the floor, and Benny was tired of customers asking for the jars of jam left in the parking lot. "You need a real workspace," Ellen told me over tea one afternoon, "and you need to think beyond just rescuing vegetables." She was right, but to dream big, I needed capital, something I didn't have. My savings account had hit $18,000, a significant amount considering I was starting from virtually nothing. But it wasn't enough to rent a commercial space. One fateful day, I met Diane Martinez at the Small Business Center. Diane was a smart, determined woman who had a knack for spotting potential and pushing others forward. "You're not just in the organic food industry," she said after looking over my data. "You're turning waste into profit." That statement opened up a whole new perspective. Diane helped me see something I had been too caught up in before. I wasn't just saving wilted vegetables, I was solving a huge food industry problem. Organic stores across America were wasting millions of dollars each year on unsold inventory that they didn't know how to dispose of effectively. "Why not franchise this?" Diane suggested. "Teach others what you do. Take a portion of their profits and scale it nationwide." The idea scared and excited me at the same time. Here I was, a 1-year-old woman who had been living hand-to-mouth in a motel room just 3 years earlier, thinking about running a national business. But the numbers Diane presented were too good to ignore. We spent 7 months developing a detailed business plan. I would start with a small processing facility in Crestwood, perfect the process of turning leftovers into sellable products, document every step, and then license the method to other stores across the country. The SBA loan application was 52 pages long, and I almost gave up 4 times as I struggled through the paperwork. But Diane patiently guided me through each step, helping me see that this wasn't just a hobby for a housewife who loved to cook. This was a real solution to a big problem. "Miss Harper," the loan officer said in the final interview, "your financial projections look very good." I leaned forward, confident as someone who was used to proving people wrong. "Ma'am," I replied, 3 years ago, I was living in a motel with less than $800 in my pocket. Last year, I turned $40,000 worth of vegetable scraps into $180,000 in revenue. My track record spoke for itself. The $175,000 loan was approved on a Thursday afternoon in April. I signed the papers in Diane's office, my hands shaking as I realized I was now responsible for a sum of money larger than I could have ever dreamed possible. Within 5 months, I had leased a 6,000 square foot processing facility on the edge of Crestwood, hired 3 part-time employees, and signed contracts to supply 12 organic grocery stores across 4 states. Fresh Start Foods, a name I chose because I believe everything deserves a second chance, was born. I can't help but feel the irony of this story. My daughter, Laura, and her husband, Michael, had written me off as a useless burden. Now I was building a business based on proving that nothing is waste if you know how to recognize its hidden value. By year 5, Fresh Start Foods had exceeded all my expectations. We had expanded to 15 states, had 52 licensed employees, and I had just signed a consulting contract with a regional Whole Foods supermarket chain. The woman who had once been shaken, devastated, and dismissed as unwanted material was now being flown to business conferences in Seattle. "Miss Harper, Your story is the inspiration the grocery industry needs to hear. Lisa Nguyen, Whole Foods Director of Sustainability, said as we toured their flagship store. Transforming waste into profit while protecting the environment, that's the future of retail. I smiled slightly, still adjusting to being seen as an expert rather than an extra. The journey hasn't been easy. There were 16-hour days, failed batches due to incorrect recipes, and moments when I wondered if I was taking on too much. But each setback taught me something new about business, about myself, and about what I was truly capable of. My personal life was also starting to stabilize. I moved into a cozy 3-bedroom apartment in historic Crestwood, with a small backyard where I experimented with new recipes. I made real friends, not just people who were there out of obligation. My Saturday morning coffee group with Diane and 4 other women became the highlight of my week. My financial success surprised even me. Fresh Start Foods was generating more than $2.5 million in annual revenue, and my personal net worth had reached 8 figures. I tracked every number carefully, not because I was obsessed with money, but because it represented something bigger: freedom. Have you thought about expanding internationally? My business advisor, Robert Klein, asked at our quarterly meeting. We've had inquiries from Australia and Germany. Slow and steady, I replied, though the idea was appealing. I want to make sure everything is perfect before I go any further. But actually, I'm already thinking about the next step. Working in food production taught me that money-making opportunities are everywhere if you know how to look for them. I started investing in other small businesses, applying the philosophy of finding the overlooked and nurturing them. But the real joy came from personal victories, like the day I hired Maria Lopez, a 20-year-old who was overlooked by everyone but had a natural talent for creating food recipes. Or when Ellen Carter, the first person to believe in me, decided to sell her organic food store and join my licensed operations team in California. You completely changed the way I saw my own capabilities, Ellen said at her farewell party. Watching you build something from scratch has inspired half the women here to dream bigger. I started writing down my experiences, partly to pass on to future employees, but mostly to remind myself. The biggest lesson: never let others define your worth. Laura and Michael had written me off as useless, a burden they didn't want to carry. They had dismissed me without hesitation. What they didn't expect was that doing so would fuel the fire that would turn me into something they never imagined I could be. Every contract signed, every new store, every success story was proof that their assessment was miserably wrong. And to be honest, I was just getting started. The search for a home started as a necessity, but it ended up being a subtle and satisfying declaration of revenge. After 5 years of being cramped in my apartment, I needed more space to expand my business ventures and growing portfolio. But more than that, I found the perfect way to send a message to all of Crestwood that Evelyn Harper was no longer a woman to be forgotten. Rebecca Sullivan, my real estate agent, was surprised when I mentioned the house. "Eve, that house hasn't been on the market in 50 years, she said. It's the crown jewel of Crestwood Hills. Crestwood Hills, the neighborhood Laura and Michael had always dreamed of living in, but had always dreamed of living in. It was a place they drove through on weekend nights, daydreaming about owning a small house with a mortgage they'd kicked me out of to pay." "Is that house for sale?" I asked bluntly. Yes, but..." Rebecca hesitated. "The asking price is $4.8 million. Show me," I said without hesitation. The Vanderbilt mansion exceeded my expectations. The 14,000 square foot Renaissance Revival home sits on 10 meticulously maintained acres. The master bedroom has a marble fireplace, a library with hand-carved walnut bookshelves, a state-of-the-art kitchen that can cater to a large party, and an outdoor pantry that doubles as a mini barn attached to the house. But what really blew me away was the view from the main living room window. From the main living room window, I could see all of Crestwood, including the modest neighborhood where Laura and Michael lived. Every morning, I could wake up and look down on people who had looked down on me. "The sellers are very keen to close," Rebecca explained, as we walked through the lavish dining area. "They've moved to Arizona and want to close quickly." "Make a cash offer," I said, without hesitation. $4.2 million, closing in 10 days. Rebecca almost dropped the tablet she was holding. Eve, are you sure? This is a big decision. I was more sure than ever. Fresh Start Foods was making enough money that I could easily repay any loans if I needed to, and my personal portfolio had grown to the point where I could make a down payment without touching the business funds. But more than anything, I was able to buy this house because I had earned every penny with my own intelligence, perseverance, and hard work. The sellers accepted my offer in just 4 hours. 10 days later, I stood in the magnificent foyer of my new home, clutching my keys, trying not to smile at my own surprise at all that had happened. 6 years ago, I slept in a dingy motel room with less than $800 in my pocket. Now, I owned the most expensive home in Crestwood. The moving truck arrived the next morning, but honestly, the furniture from my old apartment looked oddly out of place in this huge space. I would have to do a lot of shopping, but it was a problem I was happy to have. The first evening, I stood on the spacious balcony behind my house, watching the sunset paint the sky orange and purple, stretching across my 10 acres of meticulously manicured land. The silence was profound. No honking cars, no noisy neighbors, just peace, space, and a deep sense of satisfaction in achieving my dream. My phone buzzed with a text from Diane. Read the transfer news in the papers. You are extraordinary. Let's have a champagne party this weekend. I smiled and typed back, bring your best wine. We'll raise a glass to new beginnings. What I didn't write down, but thought to myself, was that sometimes a new beginning requires closing the old. And I have a feeling that the end of Laura and Michael will be very noticeable soon. Tomorrow, I will start decorating my new life. But tonight, I just want to enjoy the moment, take in the view from this height. The doorbell rang at 8:45 a.m. on Sunday, just 18 hours after the property sale appeared on the front page of the local newspaper. I was in my spacious new kitchen, still searching for the drawer that held the silverware, when the 3-note chime echoed through the granite hallway. I glanced at the security system monitor, which I was proud of, because it would make a Swiss bank jealous, and saw them standing on the porch like embarrassed salesmen. Laura looked older, her hair streaked with gray, and she wore a simple business dress that tried to pass for a devoted mother. Michael stood next to her, in a cheap but neatly pressed suit that probably cost more than my first month's rent at Benny's. Behind them were 3 children I barely recognized. Sophie, now 15, had inherited her mother's delicate features, but was blessed with kinder eyes. Liam and Noah, 13 and 11 respectively, looked just like Laura when she was little, running after me in the yard, holding daisies from the park. I walked slowly out the front door, my bare feet sliding lightly on the cool granite floor. 6 years without a word, and they showed up just as news of my new home spread through town. The timing was so predictable, it was almost comical. Okay, I said, opening the front door but leaving the screen door closed. Laura, Michael, and the kids. I looked at them slowly, noting Laura's carefully applied lipstick and Michael's strained expression. What's this surprise visit about? Mother, Laura said, her voice shaking slightly. We read about the house in the paper. We wanted to come and congratulate you. That's very kind, I said, without any warmth and without inviting them in. Congratulations accepted. Anything else? Laura stepped forward, giving me the wry smile I remembered from the old days. Eve, we know things didn't end well between us. We've had time to think about it, and we realize we were wrong about how we handled things 6 years ago. Mistaken? I repeated, slowly, enunciating each word. Is that what we call it? Sophie backed away from her parents, looking embarrassed. Grandma Eve, she said timidly, I don't remember much about you, but Mom and Dad say you used to make great beef sandwiches. Her innocent words hit me harder than her parents' forced apologies. Sophie was right. She had almost no memory of me, because Laura and Michael had stolen 6 years of her childhood from me and from her. 6 years of birthdays, school plays, bedtime stories, and grandma moments we'll never get back. Grandma makes great sandwiches, I said quietly, looking at Sophie, trying to keep my voice even. Then I turned to face Laura and Michael, who had mercilessly pushed me out of their lives like a piece of junk. Mom, please, Laura pleaded. Can we go inside and talk? What about? I asked, my voice cold. Laura's mask fell for a moment, revealing the calculation within. "We're family, Eve," she said, waving her hand toward the mansion behind me. "Family should stay together, especially when there's room for all of them." That was the real reason for the visit, as obvious as a punch. "There's room for everyone," I repeated in my head. Coincidentally, now that I owned 14,000 square feet, they suddenly remembered the family bond. "It's not fair," Michael interjected, but his eyes swept the main hall as if trying to price each item inside. "We miss Mom. The kids miss Grandma." I laughed, a real laugh, at the brazenness of it. "Michael, honey," I said, "you and Laura pushed me out of the house with a backpack and a cardboard box. Laura told me I was a burden, that my life was no longer your problem. Do you miss me now?" There was silence until 3-year-old Liam spoke up. "Dad, what is Grandma talking about? Why can't we go see her?" I took a deep breath, stepped back, and opened the door. "Since you asked for a family gathering, come in." I led them through the foyer, past the sparkling crystal chandelier and winding granite staircase, into the living room with its floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the lush garden. I watched their faces as they admired the walnut paneling, the handmade silk rugs, and the paintings that cost more than their old house. "This place is beautiful, Grandma," Noah whispered, walking to the window. "Mom, look at that garden. Is 82 and him." Laura tried to keep her cool, but I could see she was silently calculating the value of every detail in the house. "This house is really spacious," Laura said, her voice careful as she weighed each word. "Too big for one person, isn't it?" I took a leisurely seat in my favorite silver-gray leather chair, a custom piece made for this living room. "I find myself enjoying having space to be free," I replied, smiling slightly. Michael sat in the corner of the sofa, as if afraid of damaging the expensive silk. "Mom, about 6 years ago," he began, his voice faltering. "We were under a lot of pressure. The mortgage on the new house, my job was shaky, and Laura was working full-time while looking after 3 kids. So the obvious solution is to put your widowed mother out on the streets and make me homeless?" I said, my voice calm but sharp. "Very logical." "We thought you'd find a way," Laura interjected, her voice defensive. "You've always been strong and independent. We didn't think you'd end up in a boarding house." I raised an eyebrow. "You don't think so because you didn't bother to check." Sophie was staring at an old photograph on a wooden shelf, one of the few mementos I had kept from my old life. It was of Laura when she was 6 years old, sitting on my lap, holding a picture book I had read to her. "Mummy, you were so little," Sophie exclaimed, innocently. "That picture was taken right after your father left," I said to Sophie, my voice soft. "It was just you and me for 12 years. I worked 3 jobs to support you. I made sure you had books and clothes and drove you to ballet every Wednesday and Friday." I looked Laura straight in the eye. "I did everything for you. That must mean something, right?" "Yes, Mom," Laura said, her voice shaking. "It means a lot. That's why we're here today. A gratter life firsten." "No," I said, my voice firm. "You came here because you wanted something. The question is, are you going to be honest about that, or do we continue to pretend this is just an emotional family reunion?" Laura lost her temper, her voice rising. "Okay, yes, we need help. Michael lost his job 4 months ago. We're in debt, and Sophie needs money for her college applications. Are you satisfied?" "Now that's progress," I replied dryly. "But that's not all," Michael interjected, glaring at Laura as if to stop her from saying more. "We thought you had enough space here, while we were struggling for space." "You mean you want the whole family to move in here?" I asked. Not really a question. "Just temporarily," Laura added hastily. "Until Michael finds a new job. Maybe 6 months, a year at the most. Just no crayon." I glanced around my peaceful, luxurious living room, then back at the people who had pushed me out of their lives because I was a burden. "Let me be clear. You want to move your whole family into my house because you're having financial difficulties?" "We are family," Michael repeated, as if that word could open any door. "Family," I repeated, my voice quiet. "Is that the word you used when you sent me out of the house with a backpack and a cardboard box? When you told me my life was no longer your problem?" There was silence, broken only by the ticking of the wooden clock on the mantelpiece. Then Noah, 11, spoke up. "What happened 6 years ago? Why didn't anyone tell you?" I looked at my 2 grandchildren, who had been robbed of the chance to know me, and I made a decision. "Sit down," I said to Sophie and Noah. "It's time you knew the truth about your parents." "Mom, don't do that," Laura warned, her voice full of concern. I held up a hand, stopping Laura. "Sophie, Noah, Liam," I said, looking straight at the 3 of them. "6 years ago, your grandfather passed away. She was 58, had just lost her husband, and needed a place to stay while she figured out what to do next. Your parents invited her to come live with them." I kept my voice calm and clear. For 4 months, she helped care for the kids, contributed to the living expenses from her pension, and tried not to bother anyone. Sophie and Noah listened intently, their eyes filled with curiosity. Liam, the youngest, sat close to Sophie, looking serious. "Then one day, your mom said she was too much trouble and told her to leave. That same day, your dad packed her things into a backpack and a cardboard box and left her on the porch. She had $732 and nowhere to go." "No," Laura interjected, her voice strained. "You interfere with how we raise our children, undermine our role in the home." "She made breakfast for the kids," I replied, my voice even. "And she taught them to say please and thank you. Turns out that was considered a role model." Liam frowned, looking confused. "But where did you go? What did you do after that?" "She lived in a motel for 8 weeks, I said, "and then moved into a little apartment above Benny's bakery. She worked part-time at an organic food store for $14 an hour." I smiled, remembering. "And it was the best thing that ever happened to her." "How is being homeless great?" Sophie asked, eyes wide. "Because it taught her that she didn't need anyone to take care of her," I said, gesturing around the sumptuous living room. "She could take care of herself, and as it turned out, did better than expected." Laura began to lose her temper. "This is in the past, Eve. We're trying to make things right." "No," I interrupted, my voice sharp. "You're trying to save your bank account. There's a difference." I pulled out my phone and opened the text message I'd received this morning. "This is from Carla Thompson, my friend in financial aid. She mentioned a familiar name in her recent file." I looked straight at Michael. "You didn't lose your job 4 months ago. You were fired 7 months ago for fraudulently billing business trips." Michael's face was white. "How did you know that?" "I also know that Laura has opened 4 new credit cards in the past year," I continued, "and spent them all on jewelry and vacations to Hawaii. I know that you have remortgaged your house 3 times to pay for that lifestyle. I know that not only are you behind on your payments, but that your home is going into foreclosure next month." The silence in the room was oppressive. "I also know," I continued, "that you drove by my Starlight Inn every week for 6 months after you pushed me out. You knew where I lived, how much I struggled. But not once did you stop to ask if I was okay." Sophie blinked, tears glistening in her eyes. "Dad, is it true?" Michael bowed his head, not daring to look at his daughter. But Laura went on the offensive. "Okay, we were wrong. What about Mom? She disappeared for 6 years without any contact." I laughed, a dry laugh. I begged for help from people who said my life was no longer their problem. From my daughter, who called me a burden. "We're young, the pressure is on," Laura cried. "You're so cruel, wanting us to feel guilty forever, just because you have what we need now." Liam suddenly stood up, his face red with anger. "This is messed up," Mom and Dad said. "Eve moved to California to be near her aunt. They said she doesn't want to see us anymore. And I think is Rimarniels, the lard, a power." "We didn't say exactly that," Michael began to defend himself. "Yes, you did," Sophie cried, her voice shaking. "You said she chose a new life and didn't want to be part of our family. You made us think she abandoned us." I felt a mixture of satisfaction and sadness. These children had been lied to for 6 years, deprived of the chance to have a grandmother, simply because their parents were too arrogant to admit their mistake. "There's one more thing you should know," I said quietly, looking at Sophie, Noah, and Liam. "About 7 months after she left, your dad came to visit her." Laura turned to Michael, eyes wide. "What? You didn't tell me?" I looked at Michael, genuinely surprised. "You're not saying anything? That's interesting." Michael was sweating, his shirt clinging to his back. "Mom, please." "He came to my mother's apartment one Wednesday night," I continued, looking Laura straight in the eye. "He came in, drunk and crying. He said he missed me, that he made a big mistake pushing me out of the house, that he wanted me back." "You're lying," Laura snapped, but her voice was shaky and uncertain. I pulled out my phone and opened an old photo. I took a picture of the letter he wrote me that night. "Do you want me to read it to you?" It was 2 pages long, handwritten on old notebook paper. In it, Michael apologized profusely for listening to Laura and sending me away. He admitted that he felt guilty, that the house felt empty without me, that he knew he had chosen peace with his wife over doing what was right for his mother. But the most heartbreaking part was the end, when he begged me not to tell Laura about the visit because she threatened to leave him if he tried to take me back. "He chose you," I told Laura, my voice calm. "He chose to make you happy over doing what was right for his mother. And for 6 years, he lied to everyone about it." Laura turned to Michael, her face blazing with anger. "You were seeing your mother? You were writing to her?" "I was drunk," Michael muttered, bowing his head. "I wasn't thinking clearly." "No," I interrupted. "It was the first time in months I had thought clearly, and that scared me." Sophie burst into tears. "6 years," she whispered. "We lost 6 years of Grandma because of your lies." "But here's the thing," I said, standing up and smoothing my silk dress. "I'm not the woman who was thrown out of her house 6 years ago. She's weak, dependent, ready to pick up emotional scraps from people who see her as a burden." I walked to the window and looked out at the lush, meticulously tended garden. "This woman owns a multi-million-dollar business," I said, my voice even. "This woman has friends who appreciate her, employees who rely on her, and investments that bring in more monthly income than my father made in his yearly salary when he was working." I turned back, looking straight at Laura and Michael. "This woman doesn't need anyone, especially people who once threw her away like trash and now want to force their way into her home just because they can't manage their own lives." The silence stretched until Noah spoke, his voice shaking. "So you don't want a relationship with us, even though we were lied to?" The question stung, but I kept my face neutral. "I want a relationship with you, Sophie, Noah, Liam," I said. "You're the innocent victims in this, but your parents?" I looked at Laura and Michael. "They'll have to work their way back into my life, if they can." Laura shot up, the last of her veneer of sweetness falling away. "This is ridiculous," she snapped. "We're your family, Eve. You don't get to pick and choose which parts of the family you want." "Look at me," I replied, my voice calm but sharp. "What game do you want to play?" Laura continued, her voice rising. "You want to punish us for 6 years ago? Come on, Michael. Come on, kids. We don't need this." But Sophie didn't move. Neither did Noah and Liam. The 3 of them sat still on the silk sofa, looking at me and their parents with a mixture of confusion and pain. "Actually," Sophie said softly, "I want to stay and talk to Eve alone." "Sophie, go now," Laura ordered. "No," Sophie said, her voice stronger now. "I'm 15, and I just found out my parents lied to me for 6 years about Grandma. I want to hear her side of the story." Noah nodded. "Me too." Liam, though younger, nodded too. Laura looked like she was about to explode, but Michael put a hand on her shoulder. "Maybe we should let the kids talk," he said softly. "Don't take my side," Laura hissed. "I'm not on anyone's side," Michael replied, a hint of regret in his eyes as he looked at me. "I just want to do what's best for the kids." For a moment, I saw the man who had written to me 6 years ago, the son-in-law torn between his wife's pressure and his conscience. But the moment was gone. "Fine," Laura snapped. "But this isn't over, Eve. We'll be back." "No," I replied firmly. "You will not be returning unless invited. This is my home, my property, and I have a state-of-the-art security system. If you dare show up without permission, I will call the police for trespassing." Laura's face turned red. "You can't stop us from seeing the kids." "I don't stop anyone from seeing anyone," I said. "But I also won't let you use the children as emotional blackmail. Sophie, Noah, and Liam are welcome to come here any time they want. You, Laura, and Michael are not. Not until you prove you've changed. With my no. Prove how? Michael asked, his voice trembling. I thought hard about the question. First, tell the kids the truth, the whole truth, about what happened 6 years ago. Not your version, not Laura's excuses, but the truth. Then get yourselves financially stable without relying on me. Show that you can stand as the adults you claim to be. Then maybe, just maybe, we can talk about forgiveness. I smiled, cold but calm. But don't hold your breath. Can ever you and in God agree? What came to the grease of the man? After Laura and Michael left, I sat with Sophie, Noah, and Liam for 3 hours, answering their questions, showing them old photo albums of their mother's childhood, and listening to their stories about school, friends, and dreams. They were wonderful kids, despite their parents' mistakes, and I saw the Laura they once were in every look and smile. Can we come back next Sunday, Grandma? Sophie asked as I walked the 3 of us to the door. Anytime you want, I promised. I have 6 years of grandmotherhood to make up for. As I watched their car disappear down the driveway, I felt a deep satisfaction that I had not felt in a long time. Not revenge, but justice. The people who had once seen me as a burden were now just begging for help, while the woman they had abandoned was living in a luxury they could never reach. I've proven that being abandoned doesn't mean being worthless. Sometimes it's just a moment of freedom to discover your true worth. And sometimes the sweetest revenge is living a life that's truly amazing. The next morning, I called Diane to tell her about the surprise visit. How are you feeling? She asked after I told her the whole story. I looked out at my lush garden, sipped my premium herbal tea, and smiled. I feel like I've found my true calling. In the end, quiet victories are the most fulfilling. Thank you for listening to my story. If you would like, please share your own story. Your voice is valuable.